What's up, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Congratulations. You are a pure Green Bay Packers junkie. You actually clicked on the link that says could Jordan Love be traded for Baker Mayfield. You are here to, no matter what, either A, because you really like me, which amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Or B, you are just a Packers junkie enough where you are going to click on a Packers video almost no matter what, or you're just addicted to the Pack a Day podcast. I don't know what it is, but either way, thank you for being here. You are a pure football Packers junkie, and I appreciate you no matter what. We are going to talk about a potential Jordan Love for Baker Mayfield trade and whether or not it could make sense. I'm not going out of my mind, I swear to you. There are no rumors of this. There is no report of this. There is no inside information about this. This is pure me talking out of my ass 1,000,000%. So I want to be clear about that up front. The second thing is that you might be thinking, and maybe there's some of you who just clicked on this to drag me, which I get it. But if you are here for this, some of you may be thinking, Andy, this is some pure June 28th off-season bullshit. What are you doing talking about a Jordan Love for Baker Mayfield trade? You are 100% correct. This is some pure June 28th off-season bullshit. But I can look you in the eye and I can promise you and tell you I am not doing this for clicks. It's probably not going to get very many anyway. And number two, I do this for fun. I'm not going to get rich off of the Pack a Day podcast, I promise you. I'm certainly not going to get rich off of a Jordan Love for Baker Mayfield trade scenario video. I do this because it's fun, and it was an interesting thought that I had yesterday. If you were listening to yesterday's video, I was going through lead pipe locks for the Packers roster, and I said Jordan Love is a lead pipe lock, and it just got me to thinking of what scenario could possibly exist. And for some reason, Baker Mayfield for Jordan Love popped into my head, and it just started doing weird mathematical equations. If you've ever listened, well, I'm not even going to go there. Either way, it was an interesting thought that came into my mind, and it actually became much more intriguing and interesting than I ever thought it could possibly be. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Let's talk about it. So that is why we are here today. But I promise you, it is not for clicks. It is not for anything else. It's just basically for my enjoyment, and any of you who are along for the ride, I appreciate it. The other thing I want to go over really quick is there may be a couple of you listening to this who may remember back when I was doing a what if Aaron Rodgers ended up demanding a trade. This was a year and a half ago when this was the original Aaron Rodgers saga of what quarterbacks could make sense where Aaron Rodgers could get traded off to and what quarterbacks could they get back in return. And I toyed with a Aaron Rodgers for Baker Mayfield scenario. Now remember, Baker Mayfield was coming off a really good season. He was only 26 at the time, first number one overall pick. Baker was trending in the right direction prior to the start of last season. That take aged like milk. And you know what? I'm not perfect. Every once in a while, when I do a 365-day-a-year podcast, I'm going to say something in one of them that ages again, old, rotten, gross milk. That was one of those takes. It happened. But some of you might be thinking, Andy, what is your obsession with trying to trade Baker Mayfield to the Green Bay Packers? Quit trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. I get it. It's not going to happen. Spoiler alert, if you fast forward to the end of this video, it's not going to happen, nor do I think it should happen, nor do I think it necessarily can happen. But the reason I want to go over this is because there's pieces of this that are actually intriguing to me as to why, if you pervert the idea just a little bit, it starts to actually line up and maybe make some sense. Not going to happen, spoiler alert, but let's go over how this could even possibly be within the realm of possibility, and B, why maybe Cleveland, maybe Green Bay, and maybe Baker Mayfield would actually be open to this idea. Here would be the ridiculous, stupid conditions in order for this to actually be within the realm of possibility. I don't think a couple of these check boxes are checked, which is why I ultimately don't think it would happen. But here are the conditions where it would that it would have to live within, right? The first is that this Deshaun Watson situation continues to be bad and worse. And guess what? It is really, really bad and probably continuing to get worse. I don't want to talk about that because, as I mentioned, I do this for fun. And the last thing that is fun is talking about the entire Deshaun Watson situation. But needless to say, he is probably not going to play for the Cleveland Browns at minimum for this season. And that situation could continue to actually get quite a bit worse for Watson and the Cleveland Browns. So, with that in mind, that has to be one of the challenges. If all of a sudden Deshaun Watson is cleared of everything and he's ready to play, well, then of course this starts to make a lot less sense. They still need to trade Baker Mayfield, but in the situation with Deshaun Watson, and if that, they need a starting quarterback. I know they have Jacoby Brissett. We'll get to more on that in just a moment, but that situation needs to continue to trend the way that it's trending, and it very much will. The second situation is that Cleveland will need to eat a huge chunk of Baker Mayfield's salary. A part of that is going to happen no matter what. They are going to eat a pretty decent sized portion, but they would have to eat the vast majority of it, probably all but about $5 million. I think that would be a decent rate for a backup quarterback that has some potential as a future starter. Cleveland seems to have not been open to eating that much so far. When negotiations during the draft with the Panthers took place, they broke down because the Panthers wanted Cleveland to eat more salary than they were willing to do. Cleveland's going to have to take on a ton of that salary, so they're going to have to get over that in this situation because there's no way Green Bay's paying Baker Mayfield any reasonable amount of money to be the backup quarterback for this upcoming season. They just don't have the salary cap space to do that. So in this scenario, Cleveland would have to eat all but about $5 million, maybe even less than that, for Green Bay to consider this sort of situation. Number 3, and the biggest checkbox that I don't think is checked, at least as of this point, is Green Bay will have had to have fallen out of love with Jordan Love, meaning within the organization, and I don't think this is the case. I'm not reporting that this is the case, but within the organization, they would have, like, either Matt LaFleur or, the organization as a whole would have had to have already come to the conclusion that Jordan Love is not their guy, that they don't think he's ultimately going to make it as a future quarterback, and they want to try to recoup as many assets as they possibly can before his value is completely gone. So they would have had to have come to that conclusion already. I don't think they're there. I don't think they should be there, but they've seen a lot more of Jordan Love than I have. And if they've started to come to that conclusion that, we need to start getting some ROI on this because he's not going to be a future starter for us, that would be one of the conditions where maybe this conversation starts making sense. And then the last condition is that Green Bay would have to probably have some feel that there's at least an above than or a higher than 50% chance that this is Aaron Rodgers' last season in Green Bay, that he's going to retire after this season. If they feel like there's a legitimate chance that they have a real starting quarterback job open next year, remembering that, again, they've already fallen out of love with Jordan Love in this scenario, then they need to start looking at not only this season for a potential backup, but next season for a starter with what should be still a very good football team if they can find another quarterback to replace Aaron Rodgers. So just to recap really quick, the conditions that need to exist for this, even to have some realm of possibility, which again, I get the absurdness of it. I appreciate you playing along with me. Number 1, the Deshaun Watson situation has to remain the same. 2, Cleveland needs to eat a bunch of Baker Mayfield's salary, which I think that they ultimately will. Number 3, the Packers have fallen out of Jordan Love in some capacity. And number 4, they have to feel like there's a decent chance that this is Aaron Rodgers' last year in Green Bay. If those all end up being checked, yes, then let's go over why Cleveland would potentially want to do this deal. The first is they have to get out of this Baker Mayfield contract. The longer it goes on, the messier it gets. It becomes a headache. It becomes a story. They need to move on from Baker Mayfield. The second is if the Deshaun Watson situation continues as is, they need to have somebody that they can groom as a potential starting quarterback or even potentially start at quarterback this season. Yes, they have Jacoby Brissett. That is not an answer now or in the future. And you can make an argument that because they traded away all of these draft picks already for Deshaun Watson and a ton of salary cap space is already taken up, they're not going to be in a position where they're going to be able to draft a quarterback high. And again, Jacoby Brissett is not the future at quarterback for them. He might be the starter this year, but you're not going to ultimately win any Super Bowls with Jacoby Brissett. You're going to have a really rough go of it. And this is a very good Cleveland Browns roster, sans quarterback, if Deshaun Watson is out. I'm not saying Jordan Love's all of a sudden going to step in and be their savior, but they need to have somebody on that roster at quarterback that they could potentially make into that starter and at least have a high level of potential, maybe somebody that could develop into a future starting quarterback. They don't have anyone like that, nor are they going to be in a position to draft. So they're going to be in a very, very bad place if this Deshaun Watson and the entire Deshaun Watson situation goes sour. They're going to be in an awful place. They need to start taking chances on quarterbacks who have a high upside, who they're going to have to put a ton of work in, and basically cross their fingers and hope that they get something out of. And I don't think there's a better opportunity or option for them in this scenario than getting back a player of Jordan Love's caliber who has a ton of talent, recent first-round pick, did a ton with the Matt LaFleur offense, which isn't that different from the Kevin Stefanski offense. There could be some fit here. And it also could be a scenario where you get a real look at Jordan Love this year with a good Cleveland Browns team, and either he performs well, and if you need him because the Deshaun Watson situation doesn't improve, he can be your starter long term. Or B, all of a sudden Watson comes back next year and Love looked really good. Now you can swap him and get some picks back, which you've given away for Deshaun Watson already. So there's just a potential reward here for Cleveland of taking on the situation. And the other thing is I'm just not sure they're going to get that much better in any sort of trade. There haven't been teams that have been, batting down the Browns' front door in order to try to, trade for Baker Mayfield at this point. I'm not sure that there's a starting option out there. There have been some rumors lately of maybe a Seahawks for Baker Mayfield swap. The Panthers still seem to be in the conversations in some capacity, but teams haven't been banging down the door or offering anything of substance. If this situation exists where they need a potential starting quarterback, somebody to compete with Jacoby Brissett, and somebody that has developmental upside that they could hope to turn into a starting quarterback long term, that could be a legitimate real answer for Cleveland. And just swapping the two and getting somebody who can compete now and be a potential answer later, to me, makes some real sense for Cleveland, especially when you know that, Baker's not going to be on the team in any capacity anyway. So I think you could make an argument that this could make some sense for Cleveland, and that Jordan Love, or maybe Jordan Love in a 5th or 6th round pick or something for Baker Mayfield, could make some sense for the Browns. The Packers might have to add a pick there just because the Browns would have to eat a ton of salary, but I digress. That could be something that from Cleveland's standpoint makes some sense. Now, why would Green Bay do it? Remember the conditions here, right? They have fallen out of love with Jordan Love and don't think he can be the answer at quarterback, and they believe they have a opening at QB1 next season. So in that scenario, they get a very good backup quarterback this year in an all-in season in Rodgers last year, where if Rodgers goes down for 6 games, you feel very confident you could win 3, maybe even 4, maybe more of those games with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. So if Rodgers were to go down, you've just given yourself the best backup quarterback in the league, in my opinion, in Baker Mayfield. Secondly, you give yourself an opportunity to get a very good look at a former number 1 pick who was really coming along 2 years ago prior to the injury last year, to see if he could be the legitimate answer at quarterback for you next year. And we always talk about you wanting a quarterback before you need one. This gives you a potential look at a quarterback who has shown he can play well in the league under good conditions, which Green Bay should have next season. They'd probably need to add some weapons because Baker's going to need more weapons than an Aaron Rodgers will. But you get my point, right? There could be a situation where this could be a fit and Green Bay gets at least a transitional starting quarterback where maybe they start, to draft some players and see if they can't find a replacement down the road. But there's worse situations to go to if you're leaving, if Aaron Rodgers is retiring, than going to Baker Mayfield. And he shouldn't break the bank in that scenario either, because his stock's not going to be super high on the free agent market. It also gives you the opportunity to buy low on a very talented quarterback. One of the things that Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson and Brian Gutekunst are very much in the business of, as is every GM, is buying low on a player and hoping you can either reap the rewards of it or selling high later. Now, selling high is not an option because he's a free agent after this year. More on that in just a moment. But getting a very good backup at a low cost and having the potential to take a look at him to see if he could be a replacement for Aaron Rodgers down the road does become an intriguing factor to this. And remember, Baker Mayfield just turned 27 years old. In the day and age where quarterbacks are playing well into their 30s, it's not like Baker is washed and past his prime. There's questions as to his ceiling and if he can be a legitimate long-term starter in this league, but the talent is there. He's not overaged, and he still presents a buy low opportunity for Brian Gutekunst and company. And of course, you have the ability to potentially revitalize a quarterback's career who was taken 1 overall, showed a ton of potential at Oklahoma, and showed real growth in his first year with Stefanski before he suffered a really rough injury on a just, dumpster fire of a Browns team this past season. He's had, 4 coaches and coordinators, and it's just been crazy for Baker. So if you can give him some stability, play him behind Aaron Rodgers, get him in this Matt LaFleur offense, get him some weapons next year if you need it, there's a real chance that you could have invested almost nothing and found your future quarterback who, even if you feel like okay about Jordan Love, I think most GMs have given, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but to me, Baker presents the more likely upside as a former number 1 pick than Jordan Love does at this point. So we can debate about that, and you can certainly feel that Jordan Love has the higher upside. I'm not going to argue with you there, but you could make an argument that, again, if Green Bay's fallen out of love with Jordan Love, that this would be a much better place to go. The next question is, would Baker Mayfield do it? I think if I were his agent, I would say, all right, what are your options? Maybe Seattle trades for you with a really bad roster. Maybe Carolina trades for you with a really bad roster, and you're not going to be set up for success. You're not staying in Cleveland, and there's no other starting jobs that are open. So it becomes either going to a bad franchise or a team that's just not set up to succeed, or, you could go to Green Bay, sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a year, sort of get you in a more positive light. Maybe you get in for a handful of games and can show what you're capable of, and then sign a big deal in the offseason. Or if Rodgers retires, now you're the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers with a Super Bowl caliber roster, arguably one of the best head coaches in football, a very smart offense that's going to use your skills to the best of your ability. That's a great opportunity for you. So if I were his agent, I would say, yeah, that's where I would go. That's exactly where I would go if I were you. So I think it makes some sense from that capacity. So why would it not work? I think there's a lot of reasons. The biggest is that I'm not sure some of those conditions are going to come to fruition. I'm not sure that the Browns are going to eat enough of Baker's salary to make it palatable for Green Bay. I don't think that Green Bay's fallen out of love completely with Jordan Love yet. And I don't think that Green Bay is going to have a big enough belief that this is Aaron Rodgers' last year for sure, which again is going to be a bigger or a tougher selling point at that point, because the biggest thing that makes this challenging is that Baker Mayfield is in the last year of his contract. So what happened? What's the best case scenario here, right? Packers win a Super Bowl. You get a good look at Baker Mayfield. You feel confident about him. Aaron Rodgers retires, and now Baker's a free agent. So what happens? You probably have to give him a decent sized deal anyway if you're going to make him the starter. Now, I think that's the best case scenario, clearly, for a lot of reasons. Packers win the Super Bowl. Rodgers rides into the sunset. You've got Baker Mayfield as your starter, and Baker probably is willing to stay in Green Bay. You can give him a cheap contract in year 1 because Rodgers is going to get a massive, you're going to get charged a massive cap hit because he retired, and then you can spread his contract down a little bit and put a bunch of incentives in there. I think there's a way to make that work, but that might be the only one, because if Rodgers comes back, now Baker's looking for work elsewhere, right? Maybe he comes back for one more year and says, all right, Rodgers probably isn't back, but I think that's unlikely. And now if you're Green Bay, and that spot's not open, you just traded Jordan Love away, got a season of Baker Mayfield as your backup quarterback, and now have nothing else to show for it. And that is a tough pill to swallow as a GM. So that's why I said at the beginning, one of the conditions is that you've got to have a pretty good feel that Aaron Rodgers is going to hang it up after this season. So I just think it makes it difficult that even in the best case scenario, you're probably going to have to give him a pretty decent sized contract to be your starter next year, which is maybe less than ideal. And again, you're at the risk of losing a Jordan Love and his potential just based and could only get Baker Mayfield in a backup role where there's a chance he never even plays a snap if Rodgers plays every down, and you don't even really get to see that much of him anyway. So the verdict, my ultimate answer is I don't think enough of those conditions are going to get checked. And I think Baker being on the last year of his deal complicates it anymore for a team that's maybe considering him as a backup quarterback. But if some of those conditions are closer to true than maybe we know them to be, maybe Green Bay does have a good feel that this is Rodgers' last year. Maybe Green Bay doesn't feel that Jordan Love is the future of the franchise. Maybe Cleveland is ready to take on more of his, salary. Like I said, if you look through the lens in just the way you want to look through it enough, I think there's enough there to say like, Andy, you're still an idiot, but I can at least say what see what you're saying. And if you can agree with me on that Andy, you're an idiot, but I can at least kind of see what you're saying, then I will feel like I have done my job today and that this has all been worthwhile. This was meant 94% for fun and just 6% for, what if, right? It's June 28th. We've got a month until training camp. It'll get here before you know it. I've got a notebook full of topics that are not Baker Mayfield for Jordan Love that we will start getting to starting tomorrow. That does it for me today. Thanks for joining me. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.